Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So today we're tackling something I think a lot of us struggle with. Like when you're learning a language,
Yeah,
that moment when you're trying to actually think in that language.
right. It's tough, right?
It's so tough.
Yeah.
And it's especially tough in English. I mean, English can be a really tricky language sometimes.
It can be, yeah.
We found this guide that's all about breaking free from this, they call it the translation trap.
Oh, yeah, the translation trap. I've definitely been caught in that one.
It's a real thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you're always translating in your head and it slows you down. It makes you feel all jumbled.
Yeah, and by the time you've figured out what you want to say, the conversation has moved on.
Exactly. So what we're going to try to do today is figure out how to actually ditch that mental translator.
Sounds like a plan.
Let those English words flow,
Hmm.
naturally. Think like a native speaker, basically.
It's the key to real fluency, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So let's dive into this guide and see what it has to offer. I'm really curious to see what they
Me
suggest.
too. I mean, I'm always up for learning new techniques to boost language skills.
Okay, so right off the bat, this guide talks about how, most of us get stuck in this translation process.
Yeah, the classic pitfall.
It's like, think in your native language, then you translate it into English, then you check your grammar,
Yeah, make sure everything's perfect.
and then finally you try to speak.
Way too late.
Way too late. The moment's gone. And I'm like, I can relate to that so much because I I catch myself doing it all the time.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
like our brains are wired to go through those steps, but it's not the most efficient way to communicate.
Not at all. But the guide says, and this is the part that I kind of find hard to believe, that fluent speakers, they don't do any of that. They just think directly in English,
Yeah, that's the goal.
right? But how? How do they do that? And how can we train ourselves to do the same thing?
Right, like it almost sounds like magic.
It does. It feels a little magical.
Yeah.
But according to this guide, it's not magic at all. It's about rewiring our mental habits.
Rewiring. Interesting. So you're basically teaching your brain to think differently.
Yeah, to think in English. Like instead of translating, we're accessing those thoughts, those ideas directly in English.
Hmm. So you're cutting out the middleman, so to speak.
Exactly, cutting out the middleman. So the guide has these 5 techniques, 5 steps to help us do this.
5 steps. Okay, let's hear them.
Okay, the first one is super simple, almost too simple, but it's to name everything around you in English. Like everything.
Everything. Like I look at that lamp and say, lamp.
Lamp.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like don't even think about it. Don't translate it. Just
Yeah.
lamp, chair, table, window, door.
So it's like building that instant association between the object and the English word?
Yeah, like you're building a mental muscle memory. It's like training your brain to automatically think lamp when you see a lamp, not whatever it is in your native language.
Interesting. I can see how that would be helpful. Just constant low-level practice to get those connections firing.
Exactly. And the guide suggests, make it a game. Pick a room in your house and see if you can name 50 objects in English,
50. That's a lot. I don't even know if I could name 50 objects in my native language.
right? It's a challenge, but it's also kind of fun.
I guess so. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got naming objects down. What's step 2?
Okay, so step 2 is to bring actions into the mix. Start describing what you're doing in real time in English and use the simple present tense.
Okay, so like I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm recording this podcast.
Exactly. Or I'm opening the fridge, I'm taking out the milk, I'm pouring a glass.
Okay, so it's like narrating your life in English, even if it's just the most mundane stuff.
Exactly. And it might feel silly at first, but the idea is to get your brain used to thinking and speaking in English at the same time.
Right, like building that real-time narrative skill. That makes sense.
Right. So you're not just learning vocabulary, you're actually practicing using it in a natural way.
Okay, I'm liking this. What's next?
Okay, so step 3 gets a little more conceptual.
Oh, okay.
Instead of translating words, try defining them in English.
Defining them, you mean like looking them up in an English dictionary?
Yeah, but even more than that.
Hmm.
Really try to understand the meaning of the word in English without relying on your native language.
So I wouldn't look up the word happy in my native language dictionary. I tried to define what happy means using other English words.
Exactly. So happy means feeling good, like really good. Like when something amazing happens, you smile a lot when you're happy.
I see. So it's like a little game of mental gymnastics, but in English.
It is. It's a game, but it really forces you to engage with the nuances of the English language.
Yeah, it's definitely a deeper level of understanding than just memorizing a translation.
Okay, are you ready for step 4?
Hit me with it.
All right. This one's a little intimidating at first, but it's to answer questions quickly, like with 5 seconds in English.
5 seconds. Isn't that kind of stressful?
It can be. But the point is to train your brain to respond in English without overthinking it, like without translating, without worrying about perfect grammar.
So it's about pushing past that hesitation and just letting the words come out.
Exactly. And it's about building confidence. The more you do it, the faster those English responses will come.
Okay, that makes sense. But I have to admit, 5 seconds feels really fast. Any tips for getting over that initial panic?
Well, the guide suggests starting with simple questions from friends or family.
Like what?
Like, what did you have for breakfast? Or what are you doing this weekend?
Okay, those are pretty basic. I think I could handle those.
Exactly. Start simple and keep it fun. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting those English words out there.
Got it. Practice makes perfect. Or at least less imperfect, right?
Right. Progress, not perfection. And now for the final step. Step 5.
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
This one's a little more calming. Think in English before bed.
What do you mean?
Like, replay your day in your mind, but narrated in English.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a mental rehearsal of my day, but in English.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just simple sentences like, I woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to work.
Okay, that's pretty easy. I could definitely do that. I actually find it kind of relaxing to think back on my day before I fall asleep.
Right. It's almost meditative.
Yeah.
And the guide says it's a great way to reinforce what you've learned during the day. Like you're letting those English phrases sink into your subconscious.
I like it. It's a much more pleasant way to practice than, say, drilling verb conjugations.
Right. So there you have it. 5 surprisingly simple techniques to help you start thinking in English.
It's amazing how such small changes can have such a big impact on language learning.
It really is. And, thinking in English, it's not just about fluency. It can actually change the way you see the world.
How so?
Well, when you think in English, you're forced to engage with the world in a different way. You start to notice things you might not have noticed before.
Interesting. It's like looking at the world through a different lens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you start to connect with English-speaking cultures on a deeper level.
Right. You're not just learning the language, you're experiencing it.
You are. And honestly, it's a little bit mind-blowing to think about the possibilities.
Yeah, I'm feeling inspired to start implementing these techniques myself.
Me too. So for all of you listening out there, which technique are you going to try today?
Pick one, start small, be patient with yourself, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yeah. And just imagine for a moment what it would be like to effortlessly think and speak in English. To have those conversations flow naturally, without hesitation.
To express yourself clearly and confidently, to connect with people from all over the world, it's an amazing feeling.
And you know what? It's totally within your reach.
Absolutely. So go out there, start thinking in English, and see where it takes you.
That's it for this deep dive, everyone. See you next time.